let us begin. Welcome to a very special time of the year for our program, and it's an opportunity to celebrate student success and knowledge, a culmination, a base camp on their journey up Mount Teach-Ag. And so these students, and Angela in particular, is coming in front of you, and we'll have a virtual audience from Zoom and Facebook Live. We will also have you here to cheer her on in the teacher education panel as she evidences really her responses to 3 questions. Who do I aspire to be as a teacher? What opportunities have I engaged in to become a better ag educator? And how am I prepared for my student teaching experience next semester? So a culmination of not only the 4 classes from this past semester as her final, but also from a lifetime of experiences. Angela will be student teaching with Miss Deb Seibert at Manheim Central, and we're really excited, Angie, to learn from you today, and so the floor is yours.
Okay. So I'd just like to start out by saying welcome, everyone. I'm really glad that you could all come and support me here today. But let's go ahead and get started with my final presentation. So to start out a little bit, who am I? So I'm sure everyone is familiar with the little Pennsylvania hand, and I am from right down here, okay? So south of Pittsburgh, where I grew up on a beef and sheep farm, and we also dabbled in goats for a little while. But I was in 4-H for 11 years. During those 11 years, I carried market livestock projects, public speaking projects, and then also I was a member of the archery and shotgun clubs. And I graduated from Brownsville Area High School in 2013. So now you're doing the math, 2013. I've been here now for 5 years. And that's because my journey looked a little bit like this squiggly line down here. I started out in animal science. Right out of high school, came to Penn State University Park. And I thought animal science was where I wanted to be. It's where I'm passionate. I'm passionate about agriculture. But around year 3.5, I realized that I wasn't getting enough of that impact on people. I wasn't going to have a job where I was impacting enough people that I wanted to be impacting. So I made the switch through some phone tag with Dr. Ewing. I made the switch to Ag Ed, and really I couldn't be happier because I feel like this is where I need to be. So phase 1 is, who do I aspire to be as a teacher? And a quote from my teaching philosophy, which is also a quote from my father, says, the coolest thing about being alive is the possibility to learn new things until the day you die. This really rings true with me because that is cool. Every day you can learn something different. And now, my dad does not come from a background in education. This is my family. But my mom does. She got her master's in agricultural education. And so she always was preaching about being a lifelong learner, being a Dewey disciple, because that was something she knew. Now, my dad just rephrased it a little bit and didn't know anything about Dewey. But it still really makes me feel that I want to instill the thought process of being a lifelong learner in my students, so that they're not just learning when they're in the classroom with me, but after they graduate, after they go home from school, they're still able to pick up on things that are important and can carry over in their lives. Oh, before I move forward, you'll also find on your handout from me the front page, which is very colorful, has a nice tree on it. It's a little infographic of my personal teaching philosophy, and it talks a bit more about how I really think that being positive in the classroom, putting all things aside that are happening outside of the classroom, that's important. Being flexible and adaptable, which is key to being a teacher. So that's just a little bit more about my personal philosophy on that handout. Next, let's talk a little bit about classroom management. My goals within classroom management is to create an engaging space where kids won't need to really be managed. I hope that on the first day I set my rules, expectations, consequences, procedures, so that first off, kids understand what I am expecting of them and what they can expect from me. And then also through an engaging classroom where we are working hands-on, there won't be as many chances for students to get bored or have a chance to kind of act out or misbehave. Over here, I have my expectations, procedures, and consequences. So we'll start with my expectations. These are neat little posters that I'm taking with me whenever I go to Manheim in the spring so that I can on the first day of every course, I will tell students what they can expect and what I expect of them. So I expect them to be on time, on task, and prepared, to respect everyone, to be responsible, to walk in with a good attitude, and then to have fun learning about agriculture. And I thought I would make it relevant with some hashtags, Dr. Foster. Then my procedures, I would like them to be on time every day, keep their personal devices away, because Mannheim Central is a one-to-one school with laptops, and I feel that much of the work that we are doing using digital devices will not require them to be on their phone, and I would like their attention to be on what we are learning that day. Safety goggles must be worn whenever I tell them to. Obviously, some days in class you're not going to need to wear safety goggles, but when they're required, you need to have them on. And then keeping workspaces clean is very important, because with very little time to prep and prepare in between class periods, I don't really want to have to be cleaning up students' workspaces whenever it was something that they easily could have tossed in the trash or pushed their chairs in, that type of thing. And also at Mannheim, Mrs. Seibert has a policy where when you are out, your makeup work has to be done within 2 days for it to still be counted for a grade. So I put that on the poster so that students will be able to recognize that. And then lastly, my consequences. So my first offense will be a verbal warning. Second offense will be a call to your parents and an office referral, so you'll be sent to the office. And then a third offense will be detention or an in-school suspension. I do reserve the right, depending on the severity of the issue or occurrence in the classroom, to change whichever level you are first receiving your offense consequence at. But then also, if we are completing a lab, if you have a safety violation in lab that will endanger you or another student, because safety comes first in the classroom, you will be immediately removed from the class and sent to the office, because we don't want to mess around with safety. One of my personal struggles with classroom management thus far has been the chatty Cathy. I've noticed that when I went to do my micro teaching experience and even my life knowledge lesson, once I give a set of instruction to students, they kind of start doing their own thing, and I have a really hard time bringing them back and focusing their attention on me. And some days I could feel a little bit repetitive whenever I'm saying, you know, eyes up here, focus on me, about 1,000,000 times. So that's something in the spring that I really want to work on so that I'm not having that same problem. But also, I'm glad that I have my little procedures, expectations, and consequences signs, because whenever something happens, after I've already gone over them, the procedures and stuff, I will be able to calmly, politely remind the student, hey, take another look at the sign, remember what I'm expecting of you and what our procedures are here. So that's just a little bit about classroom management. Here is a model program that I designed with the, it's a scope and sequence with the hours adding up to 1320. But so the freshmen in my program would all have to take an intro to ag. You wouldn't have to enter as a freshman per se, but you would have to take the intro to ag class in order to take any more of my higher level advanced classes. Following after that, there would really be 2 pathways for you to go through. There would be an animal science pathway and then also a plant science pathway. Now, being the teacher that would be controlling the students' entrance to these classes, I would say that it's not really necessary for you to, you can jump between the pathways a little bit. Obviously, you're going to have one chosen one that you're going to complete, but if you want to dabble in another class from the other pathway, as long as I would approve that, that would be perfectly fine. So, in 350 this semester, which is our ag mechanics course, we learned a lot about how to manage a shop in a lab. So we completed a lab management plan, which I have over there in those magical binders on that table. But we completed a lab management plan, recognizing how important safety is whenever you're in a lab or a shop situation. in order to manage students better, not only do I have my procedures and expectations, but it's important to get students' parents involved, and so I have a contract made up to send home with these students that they will have to sign recognizing safety procedures, and then their parents will have to take a look at and sign recognizing safety procedures. Also, I did a project where I did a facility design, and I'm hoping that wherever I end up after my collegiate journey, that there will be a greenhouse at the program that I am hired into. And if there isn't, then I went through the steps to do a facility design project, and hopefully I could get that in the works wherever I end up. And also, we learned how to project budget, which was really fun and kind of a trying task for me, just because budgeting is not my favorite. Math is not my favorite, so I had to add and stuff. But so this is my $15 project, which I thought was cool because not only is this a project where students are learning how to use tools, look at different sizes of bolts, wing nuts, washers. They're using a table saw to cut these. This is plywood, but it goes along with my plant science curriculum. This is a leaf or flower press. It can be used for either. And whenever I was looking at the project, I wanted to make sure that approaching it, the students weren't only learning skills when making it, but it could be utilized for something that connected to the curriculum afterwards. So this was my $15 project, and we're going to see about implementing it in the spring, but if not, then I definitely have the plans made so that I can implement it whenever I graduate.
Angie, I would encourage you to pass that and your lab management plan around.
Okay. I will start this here and this on the other side. Go ahead and take a look at those. Also in 350, I included a picture down here. We made a C-clamp. It was super exciting. Welded and stuff. Welding's my favorite. So FFA and SAE integration. I think that Pennsylvania's affiliate membership is pretty important because we're showing all kids that that they're included. It's important to have that 100% membership out of your students. And the way that Mannheim tackles this is that students that want to be more involved, they're basically an FFA Gold member. They participate in extracurricular activities and are able to go on trips because of their Gold membership. But I think that FFA has a lot of important motivational strategies that go along with it. And I hope that through the organization, being the advisor, being that guide on the side, I will draw students in and keep them involved with positivity and engagement, not only with all of the fun friendship that FFA brings, but also with the career development events that they offer, and just with the connection to our curriculum. They can also explore career interests through FFA and SAE, which I think is extremely important because the agri-science program is not just going to be another class that you're coming in, that you're sitting in, that you're not paying attention, that you're kind of just taking a mental break. It's very important that we're maintaining rigor in those classes so that you can experience these different areas of agriculture that are found everywhere in almost any profession that we enter. FFA will have monthly meetings to make sure that kids are keeping their status, officers are interacting with the other members, there are other leadership opportunities besides being an officer, and then social events and retreats are always fun for kids, so that's the motivation for them to be active and participate in FFA. And then, as I mentioned before, it will be incorporated in the curriculum. Looking back at my scope and sequence, I did have on there that FFA and SAE were going to count. And it is important that your FFA and your SAE involvement is considered in your grades of all of your classes. So I know that at Mannheim, Mrs. Seibert tries for every class that she teaches, there's an exploratory or now a foundational SAE that kids go through to find best management practices for the topic of the class that they're in. And this is another way that you can incorporate the grading of that SAE into your curriculum. So we have a cute video here to watch for program recruitment that I worked on with my friend George, who is also a cohort member.
I believe in the words, but of deeds, achievements won by past and present generations of agriculturalists, and the promise of better days through better ways, even as the better things we now enjoy have come to us from the struggles of former years.
I believe that to live and work on a good farm, or to be engaged in other agricultural pursuits, is pleasant as well as challenging, for I know the joys and discomforts of agricultural life, and hold an inborn fondness for those associations which, even in hours of discouragement, I cannot deny.
I believe in leadership from ourselves and respect from others. I believe in my own ability to work efficiently and think clearly, with such knowledge and skills as I can secure, and in the ability of progressive agriculturists to serve our own and the public interest in producing and marketing the product of our toil.
I believe in less dependence on begging and more power in bargaining, in the life abundant and enough honest wealth to help make it so, for others as well as myself, in less need for charity and more of it when needed, in being happy myself and playing square with those whose happiness depends upon me.
I believe that American agriculture can and will hold true to the best traditions of our national life, and that I can exert an influence in my home and community which will stand solid for my part in that inspiring task.
So that's the recruitment video that George and myself put together. Moving forward, and once being established in a program, I would like to have kids who are maybe more hip on the times come up with what they want the video to be, what they think will get other kids, students in that school to want to join. Because let's face it, we're not going to be 22 forever, and our newness will wear off. So the community involvement at Mannheim is great, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in the spring, in my Applied Animal Science 1 class, I am teaching a unit called Intro to Dairy Science. And within that unit, I am completing, it's considered a community-based unit of instruction, where I will be working with students to create an educational piece for their children's farm show. This takes place at their fair, which they call the Mannheim Farm Show, and it doesn't happen until October. So to make sure that the educational piece, the activities that they're putting together to have next year in October are up to snuff, what we're going to do is hopefully have some students present their educational piece to our advisory board, and maybe even the principal and the vice principals of the school. We will have a dairy extension specialist come in and speak to these students about using the content knowledge that they're gaining in the class, but adding an educational piece to that to educate more than just themselves, to educate the public. So phase 2 is what experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better educator? And here come the selfies. So I was a member of the Penn State meat judging team in 2015 and the livestock judging team in 2016, and those are super relevant because within FFA we have the livestock judging and the meat judging SAEs, or not SAEs, CDs, sorry, but also there are many opportunities to have an SAE in these two areas, and also it goes along with curriculum. So I gained a lot of content knowledge, but also skills about quick decision making, speaking in front of people, networking, and the list goes on and on. My relevant agricultural education coursework that I've taken has been AEE 295, which is where I got to go and visit Mannheim, which is my cooperating center, and interact more with the teachers that I will be teaching with. So that was a great experience. And then AE 412 got me started on learning methods, which I'm going to really practice implementing and become better at and work at mastering in the spring. And then Agriculture and Extension Education 311, which was youth leadership development. Now, I was not in FFA whenever I was in high school because we do not have a program where I am from. There is not an agri-science program in any of our high schools in the county. So this class really got me started thinking about how FFA works within the class being an intracurricular student organization. So what really helped me was being able to design some of the projects that we made in there, so like our program of activities and our SAE implementation guide. And then outside of Ag Ed, I had some other favorite classes. So Animal Science 207 and 208, I really loved those because it was animal products and technology. That sparked my interest in meat science and in food products and processing. And then Biology of Populations and Communities. This is a class that really upped the science involvement that I feel I'm going to add into my classroom. It really was a refresher on some of the technical terms and things that you do whenever you're in a lab, and I'll use those to integrate into my curriculum. This semester, I had the opportunity to get certified in a lot of different things. So I'm a ServSafe food handler. I completed the NST-MOP cert. I am first aid, CPR, and AED certified. I did the Youth for Quality Care of Animals certification, and I also took the parliamentary procedure class, and I am an accredited parliamentarian now, so super excited about that. I'm also a member of professional organizations, which I feel are very important because you network with people who are also in these organizations, and they're a network that can always help you. So as you see a few of those there, probably the two that have been the most important in these past 2 semesters would have to be the Pennsylvania Association of Agricultural Educators and the National Association of Agricultural Educators. Seeing the advancement in the kind of experiences that we've had with these organizations and how I've started to pick up, notice people that I've seen at another thing that we went to. I saw some people from the Pennsylvania meeting whenever we were in Nashville this past week, and it was just nice to know that there's that support network there and that you're not the only one that has gone through this. People have gone through this before, and they're there to help you. Also, with Penn State, I did the domestic study way to Wisconsin, which you can see us down here with the selfie stick. But we learned a lot whenever we were there. I got to see a different part of the United States and some different programs that were really rock stars that we all visited. And then I was a Future Agri-Science Teacher Symposium participant this past week in Nashville, and I got to learn more in depth about inquiry education and some different methods, also with inclusion and diversity, and then I networked with other student teacher candidates from across the country. And with internships, kind of going off of my livestock judging and my meat judging, I worked at Cargill Beef in the slaughter plant in Dodge City, Kansas for a semester, and then I worked as a cowboy at Windmill Feed Yard in Nebraska. So those are 2 awesome opportunities that I had that I took, and I can take those experiences back to my classroom. And finally, phase 3. How am I prepared to maximize my student teaching opportunity? Well, the next step is on January 8th, I will be with my cooperating teacher, Mrs. Seibert, at Midwinter Convention, ready to start student teaching. But that's Miss Seibert right there. And she is one of the 3 teachers at Manheim Central High School in the Agri-Science program. The other 2 teachers are Mr. Jonathan Werning and Mrs. Heather Anderson. And the areas that they focus on really are Mrs. Seibert is interested in environmental sciences and animal sciences. Mrs. Anderson does a lot of the introductory courses. She does some animal science and then also some ag mechanics. And Mr. Werning is specifically ag mechanics. So I look forward to working with all 3 of them, as you can see in just a minute when I explain that. Maybe not yet, but at Manheim. So some observations that I've made when I've been visiting there. They have so much support from their administration and their community that I was just blown out of the water when I visited. The administration, the principal, they're just so happy that kids are involved and doing great things in the agri-science program. And the community bends over backwards to just be involved, support these kids, send them places. An opportunity that they have is they've seemed to outgrow their space a little bit. The rooms are a little bit small for all of the kids that are taking the classes, for all of the things that they have to teach with, to use when teaching. but hopefully in the future there will be room for a little bit of an expansion. And then another gem is that Mrs. Cyber runs the Young Farmer Organization, and Mannheim, although they do not have an FFA alumni, they have this Young Farmer Organization that really just adds continual support to the agri-science program, to the and to the FFA chapter, and just really supports the kids that are involved. This you will also find on the opposite side of your handout, and this is my teaching schedule for in the spring. And like I just mentioned a minute ago, I will be spending time with all 3 of the teachers. So it's color-coded, looks really nice, but there's a lot going on there, and I'm super excited that I'm going to have a chance to do some intro to AFNR, teach an agricultural processing class, also pretty much teach the animal science course from beginning to end, which yes, I know I was involved in animal science, but it's specifically dairy and poultry, so it's fun because I also have to learn the content because those are not my 2 strongest points. Organizational system. This semester has taught me that I have had to learn how to be more organized. Google Drive has been a savior, not only for myself, but I know my other cohort members have really embraced Google Drive. My plethora of binders over there is really where I'm keeping all of my lessons put together. And then a few people in here know about my Post-it system of organization. And that's just a way for me to use a planner that is larger than life on the wall with a giant sticky note, and I put all of my assignments and tasks that I have to do every day. But I'm glad that with all of the things that are thrown at you to juggle this semester, that I was able to stay organized and find something that works for me, and that's what's really important. Lastly, trusting the process is extremely important, and reflecting back on the process that has gotten me here. Some of my strengths are that I'm really passionate about agriculture and I'm really passionate about teaching it, and that's grown and developed since I joined the major. I'm bubbly and energetic, which I had some friends help me figure out what my strengths were, which we'll get to in a minute, and I'm gregarious, so those are 3 strengths that I have. But the fact that I had to ask my friends what my strengths were plays into my weaknesses. Sometimes I'm a perfectionist, and I worry a lot about overanalyzing small details, and I get really caught up on that. But that's something that I have been working to overcome and will continue to work to overcome. And then also organization. You can always be better at your organizational systems, and I'm still going to continue to work on that as I move forward. But my goals, I really want to have a good, successful experience while student teaching, and just maximize the potential of my students while I'm there. I know that I'm going to mess up, I know that I'm going to make a couple mistakes, because that's normal, that happens all the time. But really what's important is picking yourself back up again, figuring out how to correct that mistake, and then also continuing to move forward. And then after graduation, I'm hoping that I'm hired into an agri-science program where I can impact more students' lives. So I think we've been called the Elite 11, I'm not sure on that, but the rest of my cohort, thinking about my favorite quote, which is on the other screen over there, "The mind is like a parachute, it only works when it's open." I just hope that not only myself, but the rest of my cohort members will keep an open mind as they move forward into their student teaching semester, so that we can all grow, that we can all help each other, use each other as a support network, and maybe learn some things and pick up on some things that we wouldn't have thought being out there in the teaching world. But you can keep updated with me through my blog, because I will be blogging while I am out student teaching, and that's Inches to Acres Teaching to Grow. But all in all, this semester has really prepared me, and I'm super excited to get out there at Mannheim Central. So thank you. Are there any questions?
Let's show a round of applause for Angie there. Angie, thank you for your hard work. We're excited to get to learn more. And so the way we do this is that we have an opportunity for questions. And we'll rotate from the audience that's here in the room to our online audience, be it through Facebook or the Zoom session, and then to the teacher education panel. And so we'll pop through those. So be ready. We'll start with our face-to-face audience. Are there any questions from those in the room? Kayla.
Can you explain how your flower press works? Because I think that's really cool.
Oh, okay. So basically all I did was take the 2 pieces of plywood, I cut them down to a dimension that was going to allow me to utilize the most out of my material that you could purchase. The carriage bolts are inserted on the corners, as you can see. And then basically what you do is when you collect leaves or flower petals, you place a sheet of cardboard down, then you put a paper towel or a sheet of cardstock, lay your leaves or flowers on top, another sheet of cardstock, and then another sheet of cardboard. And then you tighten it down. You don't want to crush them. You're just trying to hold them flat so that the moisture will come out of it. And then after that, you leave them in there for about a week and they're dried. So it's a pretty awesome way to make a leaf collection.
Thank you. We'll now go to our online audience. Tiffany, do we have any questions from online?
Not at this time.
Okay, back to the teacher education panel. Who would like to go first? Thank you.
Angie, as you move forward into your teaching internship and then as you graduate, what is one specific tool you will utilize to continue your professional growth?
Okay, so moving forward, what professional tool will I use for my, or what tool will I use for my professional growth? I think that will have to be probably NAA communities of practice. I know that some of my cohort members did not find that the most useful out of the tools that we were given the chance to use, but I really thought that it was interesting for me to go onto communities of practice, maybe say I was looking for an activity for a dairy lesson, type that in there, and then see that there are names from teachers that I've met and recognized that are all communicating back and forth and sharing activities, ideas, lesson plans, that type of thing. So that will help me moving forward with my professional growth and then also continue with that so important networking.
Thank you for sharing. Audience has had some time to collect their thoughts. Does anybody have another question for Angie? Liv?
So you've spent 5 years here at Penn State. What do you think your journey might have looked like if you would have started off as an ag ed major instead of spending 3 years in animal science?
Wow. So what would my journey have looked like if I would have started out in ag ed? Well, I would have been a member of last year's cohort, and I would already be out of Penn State, but I got an extra football season, so it's okay. But I think that it just would have given me a chance to get involved with everything like Teach Ag Society and Collegiate FFA, which are now transitioning to the LEAD Society a little bit earlier. I maybe would have not been such a surprise individual whenever I entered my first ag ed class, which was 311, the fall of my, what should have been my senior year when I switched, and everybody else who was in ag ed was like, who is this girl? But it was neat because I made a lot of new friends in there, made a lot of friends that are going to be lifelong friends, and I think that it's interesting that there's more than one way to get from point A to point B, and living the dream.
I love that answer. Let's go to our online audience. Tiffany?
Okay, we have a question from Jeremy Grove. He says, Angie, you have shared that you have earned various industry credentials. How will you translate these personal experiences to the classroom?
And so while she thanks, I'll let the audience know that Jeremy Grove is a career and technical education director in the Cleveland Metropolitan Schools, an agriculture teacher that Angie visited on our DSA towards Wisconsin. We stopped in Cleveland. Angie?
Okay, Mr. Grove. So using those credentials that I've gained, I think that, I mean, I'm certified to be, for NSTMOP, I'm certified to be an instructor for that, but having those credentials, I'm better versed in the areas that the credentials are in, and then I can better guide, direct, and help students grow in their SAEs, in the CDs that they're interested in, and then also in the curriculum that I'm developing and implementing. So I hope that answers your question.
So Angie, as we talk about developing teachers, we know that we have this shared value of inclusiveness, of making sure that truly ag ed is for all. So I want you to kind of revisit, because I didn't hear it explicitly there. How are you prepared to deal with the needs of diverse learners in both ability and background?
I would say that my high school experience was a little bit different. It was a diverse high school in terms of students who had different SES, socioeconomic status backgrounds, and also cultural and racial backgrounds. So I feel like with many students there's a little bit of a chance to be scared about that diversity and that inclusion. Since I have experienced that firsthand, I am not as worried about having to tackle that. But in order to tackle that, it's important to make sure that you're taking a step back and not having stereotypes or prejudices that you might not even know you had. I think it was Dr. Greenfield that we just listened to do a diversity and inclusion workshop at Nashville, and he really showed us that it's not only about those stereotypes about culture and about race, but it's also about different types of learning. And so I want to make sure that while I'm throwing aside those prejudices when it comes to cultures, that I'm also making sure that my instruction is implemented in a way that introverts will be included, extroverts will be included, and all of the different types of learners.
Thank you. To our audience, Hunter.
Yeah, so I was looking through your lab binder and I checked out your design for the greenhouse. You have a whole design laid out, a whole budget and everything. You seem very prepared for that. So I was wondering how you would pitch that or justify the need for that facility to administrators and the board and those people that don't necessarily see the obvious need for such a facility.
Okay, so I'm sure you took a look at the budget and saw the cost and was like, whoo, wow, it's a little expensive. But whenever approaching that conversation with your administrators, you need to push the fact that this facility or this insert X, whatever I want you to buy for me, okay, is crucial for the curriculum that I'm delivering to these students. That they need it in order to better learn not only what I'm teaching them just in that classroom, but for industry certifications, credentials, and jobs that they'll be entering in the local community. So it's also important that wherever you are, what you're trying to implement and bring in is important to your local surrounding areas.
Let's go to our online audience.
Right. We have a question from Christina Yoder Becker.
Sorry, that's my mom.
That is her mom. Who is an extension educator in Western Pennsylvania, so brings a great deal of strength and expertise.
As an agricultural educator, share your thoughts on what you see as your personal responsibilities to both the young people you teach and to the community in which the school is located.
So I think that students are the forefront, obviously, because that's where you're spending most of your day. But it's also important that you're creating those students, molding them into successful individuals who can go out and represent your program into the community. And then as time goes by, they will become community members, sing the praises of your program, sing the importance of agricultural education as a whole, and just continue to grow your community, which is why it's important that, as I mentioned with the Young Farmers Organization, you're not just graduating and then dropping off. That's not what we want to see. We don't want to see that you completely lose involvement in agriculture and in agricultural education whenever you graduate. So hopefully wherever I am hired, there will be a Young Farmer program or an FFA alumni, or I could implement that so that those young people will be able to work with those already graduated people and continue to grow both sides.
Excellent. Mr. Curry.
You rocked out some meats and livestock judging experience, which makes my heart sing as a fellow animal science junkie. I'm curious as to whenever you go to next semester and when you start teaching, how do you make the decisions on what and how many CDEs you coach as a FFA advisor?
Well, that's a tough question, because oftentimes you want to spread yourself a little thin, say yes to everything, do everything, try to have a team and everything. Thinking about Mannheim, they do not have a meat judging team, which is okay, that's fine. But I am going to have the opportunity to help coach their livestock judging team, which I'm super nerding out about. I'm really excited for that. But I think that you need to make sure that as you start, you're not starting out bigger than you can handle, because then nothing is going to be successful. You need to get a grasp on maybe 1 or 2 to begin with, and then once you get one completely handled, you have your guidebook, you have your references for that, it's possible for you to step back as the coach and have a community member come in and act as their coach or mentor in that CDE, and then that will allow you to pick up another and continue to branch out and have more. So hopefully that's what I will implement.
From last round to the audience. Dr. Kaplan.
Hi. Your passion is like off the charts. It's amazing. And I guess my question's about how you might ignite the passions and spark for this kind of lifestyle and life path, career perhaps in your students. So can you imagine, maybe within the next 5 years, something that you would develop? It could be a strategy, it could be a way of working, that would be a new way that nobody really thought of, to ignite some spontaneous sense of discovery from students to pursue this. Something that no one's done before, no new consequence, but a way to develop that spark, to ignite it.
Well, as technology continues to develop, I'm sure there are going to be some crazy things that come to the forefront here soon, because, I mean, a minute in technology is like 300 years than any other time. Which I think that there will be some opportunities to digitally inspire people. I just want to continue that engagement so that so that these students will understand how important it is to be in agriculture, but then also that if they like to do the same things that I do, not necessarily meat judging and livestock judging, but if they like to share their passion about agriculture and education, that they have the opportunity to come do this too. I've seen situations where students have had a supervised agricultural experience where they've done kind of teacher shadowing or being a TA in classes. And so I think that that's an important thing to start to implement in your program if you have kids that are interested. But then also, just that technology piece that we're not sure where it's going to go, but if there is something that really comes up that's new and hits off the charts, then I really want to have my students lead that up and grow digitally and grow into the career of agricultural education.
All right, we have another question from Zoom. This is another question from Mr. Grove. He says, to expand on my question a bit more, how could you include various industry credentials into your curriculum?
Okay, so I know that with the safe tractor driving, you can implement that easily, very easily, into an agricultural mechanics pathway or class. With your intro to AF&R or your intro to agriculture, the parliamentary procedure can fit right into there, because it's important to know how to be able to run meetings and how to interact in a meeting setting. And also through that, kids will be able to be on the parliamentary procedure CDE team and then be able to take the test possibly and become accredited. So ultimately that's what we're striving for. We want our students to also get those accreditations or those certifications, and finding a place to fit them into your curriculum depending on the content area is totally doable.
Thank you, Angie. I believe we have one last question from Dr. Ewing, representing the teacher education panel.
Yes, Dr. Ewing.
All right. I was thinking about doing something around chapter 339, but I changed my mind. Of the 5 Rosenshine first variables, which one do you believe that you will come most easily to you, and why? And which one do you believe that you will need to work the most on to get better at during your student teaching experience?
Okay. So the acronym that we learned for that is BCOV. But I think what is easily going to come to me is the enthusiasm piece. I mean, I think you all have picked up on that while I've been presenting. But the V in BCOV, variability. I think that one might be kind of tough, because once, you may not think about it, short term or long term. If you find an activity that you like, you tend to just shift it and keep implementing that activity in everything, and that is definitely not variability. So just making sure to think about what I'm teaching, think about how I'm teaching it, and make sure that I'm not accidentally getting stuck not being, showing variability. That's what might be tough, but I'm prepared for the challenge.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Let's give another round of applause. It means a great deal to us that you came. We would hope that you might come back. Our next presentation is at 11:30 at Carly Wright. Till that time, or just even on your way out, I encourage you to pick up a handout at the table to learn about our program and to enjoy and partake of, I believe it was Dr. Ewing, I can't remember, someone asked Tara what army she was prepared to feed, but we have great snacks available in the holding room of Ferguson 214, so please pick up a drink and a snack. We appreciate your sharing the hospitality with us, and maybe you'll come back at 11:30, so thank you very much.